Hey folks, thanks for joining me for this episode from the EmbellishPod. If you got here by chance, please take a moment to hit the subscribe button. Hopefully it can be found on any podcasting platform that exists. And if you can't find me on a platform, send me an email at embellishpod@gmail.com and I'll get that taken care of. You can also find video versions of this podcast on YouTube. You can find all of my links on Instagram at EmbellishPod or TikTok with the same handle. I have a website. It is www.embellishpod.com. It's also a place to pick up these links, episode details, and more. Today, I'm going to get an opportunity to talk about possibly one of my favorite things that happens every single year. It is the Kentucky Bourbon Festival. Randy is going to join me. He has been the force behind making this event what it is, and we get a chance to talk about it. It's a super fun event, and you'll get a little bit of details, but you absolutely want to be there if you are a significant bourbon fan, and if you're listening to this podcast, you obviously are. This morning or afternoon, whenever you happen to be watching or listening to this, I have Randy joining me from the Kentucky Bourbon Festival, and I'll start with a little bit of backstory. I've been attending the Kentucky Bourbon Festival since the change. I live in the far western portion of the state, the far western portion of the state. And when you guys made the change to the new event type, that was the first year that I attended. And I came as a standard attendee and then a VIP attendee the second year. And then last year, I got the opportunity to come in as a media pass. And I'll say it's one of my favorite events, and it's favorite enough that my wife, who's a school teacher, actually requests time off work so she can come to the event as well. She's paired with me, which, I don't know if you know anything about school teachers and getting time off. It's not always the easiest thing in the world for them, but you took over running Kentucky Bourbon Festival kind of at the nexus of this type of a change. Can you tell me a little bit about, how do you get kind of plucked out of the air and brought into this event that you now are going to bring drastic change to?
Yeah, and thanks, John. And very cool that your wife is willing to take that. That's a big hit. I know that. I know how difficult it is. So I started here January of 2020, and if you look back on your timelines, it was about a month and a half, 2 months before pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
So I was talking to the board, the new board of the Kentucky Bourbon Festival in December of 2019. So nobody had ever heard of coronavirus, COVID, any of those nasty words. But the reason I was talking to them is they realized that the old version of the festival, which was 30 years, 29 years, and going on to its 30th year, was not working any longer. It wasn't checking the boxes that needed to be checked. We had a car show, we had a balloon glow, we had a golf outing, we had a pancake breakfast, we had bouncy houses, face painting, a Budweiser beer garden, but no actual bourbon at the Bourbon Festival. And it seems very counterintuitive, because I used to run craft beer festivals, and that'd be like saying a craft beer festival has all these cool things for people to do, but you can't actually sample any beer. So the board recognized pressure from the distillery saying, "Hey, it was fine for years. We'd love to be a partner of your community street fair, but as you know, 1990s when this started, there wasn't exactly a renaissance in the whiskey world yet, and so a lot of these distilleries were just local around Bardstown, and they'd get together and drink each other's juice, tell stories, and it kind of grew into what it had become, which was 10 or 12 of the larger distilleries coming in and trying to do offsite events and everything, but it really didn't gel. So the board decided that probably the biggest problem we had was that the board was actually made up of Bardstown residents, and that was why it was staying so local, and it wasn't really aligning with what the distilleries needed. So the first change they made was within their own model of leadership to make it to where all of the distilleries, our entire board now is either a distillery or construction company, someone in the industry. So that was predated me, and they said, okay, now we got to go out. We know why we need to change this event. We just don't know how. And so I was at Churchill Downs, just down the street or up the road in Louisville, running all the operations for the Kentucky Derby. And I got talking to them, talking to the board, and here I am. And so I was the how. How are we going to change this? How are we going to make this not only bourbon-centric, whiskey and distillery-centric, but also elevate the experience? And when I was at Churchill, all the sponsorship team and the ticketing team, everybody would argue and boast about how cool what their accomplishments were. And my boss, who was vice president of all the operations, been at the track for 30 years, said, that's all well and good, but if you don't have those 20 horses in the starting gate, you don't have a derby. And that stuck in my head. And in this case, our 20 horses in the starting gate are the distilleries. So I don't mean any disrespect to you or anybody else that's trekked from all over the country to come to this festival, but you're always going to be second behind those distilleries. If we start focusing on anything but the distilleries, they start losing interest. We're not the place they need to be any longer. And then everything else kind of erodes. So the customer is right, but the distilleries are really what we're doing here. So and it's worked. And, we went from 11 distilleries in 2019 to where we have now 55 distilleries. Half of them are the craft, smaller distilleries, up and comers that really had not been able to be involved in the festival before we did this kind of revisioning of the event. So it's very cool to not only have all the majors, a couple of them that withdrew and said, we no longer can align with, your festival isn't aligning with our brand and our objectives. They're all back. And then the craft distilleries continue to come forward. So it's a little longer answer than probably you're looking for, but that really is the last 5 years encompassed in a kind of a Reader's Digest version.
Yeah, no, it's definitely the perfect kind of answer I'm looking for. I mean, you're taking an event that effectively was an employee appreciation event, and that was something, but the distilleries. That's the thing that I haven't heard before, at least not spoken in maybe exactly that way. Is that this was brought on, a change was needed. It was identified by the board, but also the distilleries were looking for a different way to position it, and the customer does come first, but for the Kentucky Bourbon Festival, the primary customer is the distillery, and we're all there to sort of celebrate them, right? We're all enthusiasts that are showing up because we either want to taste something new or celebrate these particular distilleries. So it makes a ton of sense. I don't think that there's any insult that kind of comes to us is like, yeah, no, treat the distilleries right, because we want to see more and more robust offerings from them, because it's a unique opportunity.
And John, you come in the gate, and to the left is where all the mid and large size brands are. And you want to see that, right? You want to see that Four Roses and Woodford, and 17, those guys are all up there, Maker's Mark, Jim Beam. But then on the right, down in the craft distillers area, there's 26 or 28 craft distilleries. And a lot of people get excited about that because they're looking to discover something new. They're going to go see the big guys, but they want to get some bottles from what they know and love. They also want to leave with some new expressions that they've never actually even knew exist. So that's kind of the cool magic of watching how people come in that main entrance and how they split, and listening to the buzz when they're going through.
It is. I stood just to the inside, getting in as a media member last year. We get in a little bit earlier, and I stood sort of 50 feet back from the main entrance as they started letting people in to kind of see how does the crowd go. And at least what I noticed last year is on the Friday and Saturday, the majority ended up in the craft section. So it is a really good point that you make there. And I think maybe everybody sort of views it like the heritage folks are going to be there the entire time, no matter what. But some of these craft distilleries may only have a finite amount of supply of whatever it is that they're bringing around. So got to hurry up and get over there and sneak that in. There's a lot of things that have changed with the event, even since 2021, right? So 21, 22, and 23. I think it's grown in appropriate ways. And I'll say this, each year after I finish the event, I would sit down, I would record an episode and record a video over, here's the things that I would love to see done differently. And inevitably I would show up the next year and some of those things were already marked off. And so there's obviously a lot of attention to detail, and attention to places to make the event better and better year over year, which can be a daunting task in and of itself. As last year becomes the metric for the bare minimum of success of the next year. How do you elevate it a step above that?
It is. And that's the depressing part for me, right? I mean, I put everything I have into this, and anybody who knows me knows that it's not a 8 to 5 banker's job. I'm a farm kid by heart, dairy farmer. I work 7 days a week on this year round. I'm always putting everything I have into it, blood, sweat, and tears. And when it's over, there's that amazing feeling of accomplishment, but also equally heavy the kind of the letdown of, oh man, we got like 2 days to enjoy this and I got to start all over again. And we're a small team. I
Mhm.
mean, there's 2 people on staff, me and then Stacy Pritchard. I hired her a year ago to be the person that is the liaison with the distilleries. Because again, in 2019, I had 11 distilleries. Actually, 2 dropped during the pandemic year and said they wouldn't come back if we didn't really back up what we said. So we're under like 9 or 10 distilleries. Now we have 55 with the waiting list. I need someone that can do that work. But it is year round. And the oldest joke in the industry is, okay, well, that's over. What do you do the rest of the year? I've already got a 2025 file of things that I know I'm not going to be able to work on or improve this year that I'm going to incrementally get us closer. But next year, there's already a list of things that I got to be mindful of this year if we want to keep moving the ball, and but that's also the fun part.
Yeah, and that may be the part that sort of keeps it interesting. I know I've had the opportunity within my own professional career to have to plan an event, and usually, you can't have more than 2 weeks after the event ends before you're trying to do a postmortem and make sure you capture everything that you need to change. So there's
That's
not
right.
much breathing time in there. I will ask, maybe this is the odd way to ask this. So every year you change something, I guess. For this year, what's going to stay the same? Like what's the thing that felt successful from 23 that then bleeds into 24?
And that's always that balance when you finally do find a kind of a recipe that works. I don't want to get too deep into my career, but in my resume, but I used to run the Wisconsin State Fair, 150-year-old event now, and then Churchill Downs, 150 years old this year. And people will be like, you're not going to change anything, right? I mean, we love this. And then you talk to them and they're like, okay, what's new this year? So it's always that balance of what are you not changing and what are you going to do new that's going to continue to keep people coming back. And we're 3 years into it. This is the 4th year under the new model. And I'm a realist. I've got buddies that come from school, from hometown that come down. Eventually, the 2 or 3 years in a row, people are going to sit one out and go to a spring training, or they're going to go do some baseball games around MLB parks for their boys trip, girls trip. So I'm a realist. I know we're going to have some attrition. So the thing that we're trying to keep the same, again, is that emphasis, the focus on the distilleries. The laws have changed to be very favorable in Kentucky during my time here. So the direct to consumer, distillery to consumer sampling is now legal. And bottle sales last year was really the first year that was legal. So that's something that we're really going to continue to focus on and emphasize, is make sure distilleries are coming here to not just set up a trade show and talk to people, but it is a sips to lips event, and it's also a conversion. If you love what's in that little Glencairn glass, that you go buy it right from the distillery. It's something that has been unique to us. There's no other festival in the world that you can have that direct, and you're not just talking to some cute college kid that happens to have a branded T-shirt on. You might be standing there talking to Brent Elliott from Four Roses or Connor O'Driscoll from Heaven Hill. Last year, Fred and Freddie No with Jim Beam were sitting out in rocking chairs slicing ham and giving to people and talking to people. And it was Freddie's birthday. So it really is a lot like having a backstage pass at Lollapalooza and all your favorite bands are playing, but you get to kind of hang around and talk to them. So that will always, if I'm here, that's always going to stay the same. The operations, the tents, I believe the tents, the white clean lines, and for people who haven't been to the venue, it is absolutely the most challenging venue to try to program and set up. But when it's up, it's probably one of the most beautiful venues I've ever worked in. So the tree lined, it's 2 little parks that are adjoined by a street. We've got a 200-year-old building that also houses the Oscar Getz Museum of Bourbon History right there, and it's included with the event. So I always feel like that the tents are give a nice, clean, sophisticated look, and the distilleries can take those tents and do what they want to customize them and make it their own and make sure it represents their brand. And that's really the conversation we have year round is, and this year, kind of an insider scoop that I've not told anybody about, so you hear it first. We're doing a kind of a People's Choice Award that our customers will be able to vote on their favorite distillery setup. Maybe not the favorite bourbon, but the coolest either presentation in their whole venue or the lounge area. Some of them last year, Angel's Envy and Pursuit Bourbon was doing like the games and things to kind of keep people there. So you're going to see a lot more of that competition between the distilleries to kind of outshine their neighbors and also do things that holds our guests there longer. And the net result is our bourbon enthusiasts are the ones that win in that game. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah, without a doubt, and that was one of the things that felt at least a little more robust. As I've been for the last 3 years. Year one felt very much like a festival. Year two, you started seeing more intentionality in the spaces, kind of like what you're talking about, where they're building out a spot to sit down. If I think about, Maker's Mark, Four Roses, I believe both did some things. I think Bullet did one as well, where they had the trailer with the little seating, and they start bringing these things into play. And that was kind of the missing piece from the first year, was the number of places to sit down or sort of rest or whatever. And then you start seeing these other brands do it. And I like this, putting it into a competition now, because I can only imagine um, what these distilleries will do, because it's always it's just like the barrel relay that they have as well, right? Like there's competition, which is friendly, but also sort of not friendly, because you want to win, but nobody's going to get mad for necessarily for losing. And I hadn't
No.
thought about that. I really like this white tent thing. It escaped my brain. I've been to quite a few fairs or beer festivals, and you're exactly right. When you go to those things, everybody sort of brings their own tent, and it's got their own color, and it almost becomes too much for the eye to take in, because you've got brown here and you've got bright red over here and you've got the other thing, and you sort of get lost. But having that sort of blank palette that allows you to kind of focus not necessarily on the tent, but on what's inside the tent,
Thank
is a
you.
really, really smart thing that I hadn't thought about until now. Now it's going to be what I'm going to think about most of the time at the
Well,
festival this year.
it is very deliberate. And
Hmm.
years ago, the distilleries were investing money in building the little houses and cabins and all that kind of stuff. And while that is also fun, the reality is the distilleries are either doing more and more of these events, so they don't have the ability to move those things. There's
Hmm.
costs involved in maintaining and constantly having to rebuild. So when we give them the tent and they can go and talk to a decor company to do all the palm trees and the seating, and they can focus on what they're going to be serving, sampling, pouring, selling, and not so much on who are we going to get to drag this cabin over on two trailers and a forklift and try to build it and all of that. So anyway, it is part of the dynamic. It's the curb appeal when you approach, and that
Hmm.
was really important to me. The first year of this new festival, we wanted it to look different from outside. So as you were approaching it from the various directions, the old festival had no fence.
Hmm.
It was a family friendly event. We went to 21 plus because in effect we've got 55, almost 60 fully activating bars, inside
Hmm.
there. But we didn't want it to look like a job site, so we put the fence on, but we wrapped it. Welcome bourbon enthusiasts. It's part of the approach, and all you see is these tents. And if you haven't been to the Bourbon in the Air, I think you probably went the first year when it was at night
Hmm. Yep.
with all the lighting and uplighting the trees. This year we're going to blow it out, and we're going to move the whole opening night, Thursday night preview event later in the evening. So we once
Hmm.
again kind of get that magic of bourbon in the air under the stars, hopefully not under the raindrops, but we've had that too. Um, but it is that piece, and I want people to feel calm. We're not trying to be snobby. I mean, that is
Hmm.
not the objective here. We want it to be uniform so people can look down the nice clean rows and see their distilleries. We put the little shingle signs out for everyone so you can really sit back and figure out what your game plan is going to be. Who do you want to visit? Where are they? It's a small venue, so if you've got a 3-day ticket, you figure out where everybody is pretty quickly. But we're adding more seating, more umbrellas, more covered areas, more lounge furniture. Not just, we're not putting hay bales out, for people to sit on. We're actually, investing in really nice patio furniture and things so people can enjoy the event and sit down and hopefully hang out with their friends and make it a really, it's very sociable. You know that bourbon is very sociable. Your group of friends, you meet new friends. I've got friends that I've met out here that I
Hmm.
still keep in touch with. Um, so that I see that happening over and over again, where it's like a reunion. People, bourbon enthusiasts that hadn't seen each other since last September, are now, hey, and it's kind of fun to see that. It makes it all worthwhile for sure.
Yeah, and there's quite a few of us that will end up planning, like, hey, let's show up on Wednesday and do a distillery tour together, or stay through Monday and go do something together. And it's almost
That
as
is
if it's almost as if someone for either you or someone from your team is watching the notes, because that was like one of the only things that I had on my list from last year. Is like, there's still, which you're growing the event, but there's still a lack of seating from time to time as you get later in the day. But you already covered that. You already talked about those things. So, and you've talked about a handful of things that are different this year. But is there anything else that maybe is going to be a stark difference or improvement that you're bringing forward for 2024 as opposed to 23?
There are four things that if you're a 3-day general admission, the bourbon taster ticket, as we call it, if you're having that ticket, you're not getting into the VIP experience. That's a whole different conversation. But what you will see, last year we expanded the food trucks out. There was a church parking lot. Food has always been a thing that we've struggled with. We're half an hour, 40 minutes outside of Louisville. There's not a lot of food truck operators and restaurant operators in Bardstown. So we really went all in last year to make sure we had 14 or 15 food trucks of a variety of different food menus. And that's staying this year. But what you will see this year is the main street in front of the festival grounds is going to be closed now, primarily for safety, because you're literally walking on a sidewalk 5 feet away from live traffic.
Mm-hmm.
So we're closing it down. But the functional part of that, beyond the safety, is that all those food trucks are going to be lined up along the entire run of the main entrance to the festival. We'll be throwing in a couple of dining tents. So rather than one dining area, we'll have 3 tents with tables and chairs. So people, regardless of where you're buying your food from, which end of the street, you'll have areas to sit and enjoy your meal if you choose to. And then the church parking lot is going to be our bourbon marketplace. So all of the bourbon barrel furniture and the artwork and the syrups and honeys and all of those kind of things are now found a permanent home in the St. Joseph Church parking lot. The great tent and the media tent, you saw the media tent last year, that was new. So that is all going to be out there as well. And it's going to be one long venue with the catering in the middle. So the media will still be able to come out there, but we're adding 2 interview suites. So it's not just going to be like a mini VIP for media, but there's also going to be workspace in there. We're adding more of the outlets, more of this, stand up and sit, tall tables with outlets built in, so you can plug your laptops and your phones in and conduct media interviews or kind of get your thoughts in line before you go back out. So very media focused on that, because without you, we can't get the word out. So thank you. And we want to make sure when you arrive that that we value that partnership. So that will all be new. And probably the 2 biggest things that you'll see is with the state law changes, there are some distilleries that don't have and cannot get the proper licenses to sample and sell. So we're partnering with Evergreen Liquors, and there will be a large tent there that all of the distilleries that can't be out on their own, they can now sample and sell within the Evergreen Liquors bottle shop. So that's going to be cool. We'll have probably 8 or 10 distilleries that otherwise we wouldn't be able to have here, but they'll be there, and you'll be able to walk in and sample and sell just like you would if you're out on the main lawn, but we're making sure we're being compliant. And then we're adding like a little cigar patio there with some furniture so people can kind of hang out and enjoy a cigar. And then right directly across the lawn from that, and this is where the media was last year, we're building the first ever double deck temporary structure here at the festival. So the ground level will be our fair store, or festival store. You can go in and buy your shirts and hats and things like that. And then upstairs is going to be a cigar lounge, full roof with railings, and you'll be able to go upstairs and people watch. People love to be on the railing and watch people down on the ground. And then we're creating, if you're a cigar smoker, we're creating 3 small, like 10 foot by 10 foot, let's call it, smoking suites that you can rent out by the hour. So you and 5 buddies can go up there, have nice tables and chairs, and Angel's Envy is our partner again on that. So you'll arrive and you'll get maybe an old fashioned or some kind of a cocktail on coasters that you can take with you. And then you'll be able to sit up there and, we listen to the cigar smokers, and they said, look, it's about an hour it takes us to do that. So we're creating this hourly ability to go up there and enjoy your cigar and people watch. And again, one new thing that hopefully you don't get anywhere else. We try to be a little special that way.
You marked off like four different things that I already had on here, because, one of the concerns is getting landlocked and how do you resolve that problem? Well, you're expanding out in the street and you're moving things around. That makes a ton of sense. And keeping and enabling the ability for smaller brands. And when you said, Evergreen being able to do this, I immediately think of people like, Rare Character or Dark Arts that are, smaller houses that don't necessarily have those same types of relationships that they would need to be
Right.
able to do this. That's fantastic as well. I marked off like all kinds of things here that you're just a pro at this, right? Because you're already knocking out all of the questions that I have, and now I'm having to kind of quickly regroup and make sure where we're going next. That
Well, and
the
talk, I mean, go into any of those points. If you want to deep dive into anything and want more, I mean, that's what we're doing here. I want to be able to not just kind of bullet point everything, but if you had something you really wanted to
right.
kind of deep dive in, go for it.
No, so the craft portion, right? So you have the area where you have the bourbon crafts. They're usually artwork or handmade items, whatever. Is that still going to be behind the entry gate, so only attendees have access to that, or is that because like the food trucks sort of lived outside the gate, so you could access those
Right.
just as a person in Bardstown.
Right.
That'll stay behind the paywall, so to speak.
Correct. And that's the same. So the marketplace vendors, and I say this very carefully because I don't want to get anybody in trouble, but they so much appreciate being inside the paid perimeter and not necessarily being out with the public. And I certainly don't want to suggest that there's any kind of folks of ill dispute here, but I mean their sales are a lot stronger. The people that are shopping are there to actually look at their products and buy their products. And so they've told us year after year that we're one of the strongest shows that they do.
Mm-hmm.
The food trucks are, on the other hand, will be outside because we
Right.
want them to make money, but not at the cost of primarily their service is to take care of our guests. But
Mm-hmm.
if there's someone someone who came into town, didn't even know that the bourbon festival's going on, couldn't get a ticket because we sell out every year, they can at least kind of still enjoy downtown. And Scout and Scholar and Mammy's, all the mainstay restaurants, a lot of times will have a half hour, 45-minute, hour long wait, or you
Mm-hmm.
can't get in at all. So we'd rather at least keep them here and let them know that the festival is there. And we've actually picked up some customers that way that were in town for a wedding or whatever, and they happened upon us. And they started asking questions, and they bought tickets and came the following year because they had such a good time just being around it. So it's a really cool vibe that goes out to the whole community. So it's still very much a community event for everyone. But 85% of the people that come now are from outside of Kentucky. So the 15% that are Kentucky residents, I mean, they're bourbon enthusiasts. They're here.
Mm-hmm.
But the 85%, those were probably the people that weren't coming before we made this change, right? So
Yeah.
from a tourism perspective, the Kentucky Department of Tourism, Louisville tourism, Elizabethtown, tourism, you get, obviously Bardstown, the rooms are full. The Airbnb folks are happy. They're building new properties. They're renovating the old properties. So in a way, we're helping that. We're an economic driver too, in addition to just being a weekend bourbon festival. But there's a real positive economic impact that the whole region feels by having us here.
Yeah, it's definitely the first 3 years is really, really easy to see the impact that something like this will have on Bardstown, just simply because if you start places that are used to this type of an event, they have, maybe more accommodations, more parking, more transportation options, and those don't exist in Bardstown. So you're bringing something that wasn't there, a massive amount of people all at one time, which is great as the town sort of figures out how to deal with that on a regular basis. It
Right.
gives them the opportunity to potentially do more things like this, whether it's, they have the one that is for external, maybe they build one that, the city of Bartown says, hey, we want to do one, but this is employee appreciation. It's for people that work at the brands, whatever. You've listed off a whole lot of added features, added things that a person who's interested in coming might want to now attend. When we've made it this far, we're 28 minutes in. When is it? How much is it? And how the hell do I get there?
We made it almost halfway through and not even mentioned the
Right.
website. So we just launched a new website within the last couple of weeks, and it's kybourbonfestival.com. I will tell you that if anybody has the old site bookmarked or used the www and then went into kybourbonfestival.com, it was a glitch that was Google and all of the different tech stuff behind the scenes that was redirecting people to the old website. So when you go to the new one, you can go kybourbonfestival.com. You should see like a little graphic that says pouring, like a white screen, but with the letters pouring. Then you know the new one's coming up. If you had it bookmarked, it might work. As of 2 hours ago, we've got a lot of the tech stuff worked. But I'm just saying, if somebody goes and you see the older website, don't get alarmed. Go to the kybourbonfestival.com, drop the www part. So we're September 13th through the 15th this year. If you've been coming in previous years, we're typically the weekend later. So we're usually we would normally be the 20th through the 22nd this year, but there's a number of reasons we moved forward. There was another event, Bourbon and Beyond, up in Louisville, that we don't compete with customers, but having two bourbon themed events, one very much bourbon like us, and then a music festival that has some of the distilleries involved, it was getting to be a real strain on those distilleries. Mm-hmm. And you talked about the logistics and the operations, and a lot of the things that I work on improving, you may not even know, but it's there, the subliminal piece, and that is fencing and the golf carts and the forklifts and the trash cans and getting hotel rooms, getting the tent inventory. When you have 2 or 3 events that are all competing, those things make it strenuous, especially for the smaller event. We're a boutique event. We don't aspire to be anything bigger than what we are now. But so we moved a weekend earlier. So we're the 13th, 14th, and 15th. Same hours as last year. So noon to 6 on Friday and Saturday, noon to 4 on Sunday. And then if you had a VIP, we allowed hour early admission for VIPs. So that's something. Our VIPs last year it's very humbling to watch it. I was watching it real time. We sold out in 4 minutes of our VIPs. Mm-hmm. So we're trying to figure out a way to create more VIP tickets, because that's really what people are getting. I mean, people are mad at me, emailing me like they got blown out, couldn't get VIP, which on one hand is such a great problem to have, but on the other hand, it's like, I really don't want people feeling like they couldn't get the opportunity or they had to settle for something. So we've expanded it a little bit more, offered maybe 100 more tickets this year. But I will tell everybody at this point, when we're talking about new websites and things, the real secret is to get into and subscribe to our e-marketing, e-newsletter, be a Bourbon Insider, because when we go on sale on April 17th, which I believe is a Wednesday, April 16th, the day before, if you're one of those 30,000 people on the Bourbon Insider list, you get a chance to go in and buy all the tickets you want before they go on sale to the public the next day. So that is the trick. Last 2 years, I don't think our VIP even made it into the general public offering. So if you are so inclined, and we spent a lot of time and a lot of money again this year on that VIP experience, but I've always believed, or I've come to believe over the last 10 years when I saw at Churchill Downs, if everybody is a VIP, then nobody really is a VIP. So we're being very careful that maybe 10 to 12% of our overall ticket offering. So if you have 7,000 people out there, 10 to 12% of that overall attendance is being held back for that VIP experience. So this year we've almost 50% larger VIP structure. The entire parking lot, front to back, is going to be tented. So it's going to be a 60 by 160 foot climate controlled venue. We're putting a full floor and carpeting in. So it's not going to be just on a parking lot where you see the parking lines. It's going to be a floor with carpeting. We're adding an outdoor, like a full open air porch. So people can be sitting outside on these lounge suites and enjoying the festival. And if you've been there, it's down in the craft area right in front of the main stage where we have like the Bourbon 30 show and all the the buzz that's going on right there. So it's going to be a lot bigger, more covered seating. And we've got some other, I guess, surprises that we're trying to finalize. We're adding a hydration station. So if you're one of those that needs the IV to kind of keep you going through the weekend, we'll have that this year. Four bars. We partner with Distilled Living, and if anyone knows Distilled Living, and Tim Niddle does an amazing job. So we're elevating our cocktail offerings and our neat pours again. The catering is going to be improved again. So I mean, I think all in, we probably are $150,000. I'm pretty transparent. I don't mind sharing this.
Mhm.
Just in catering and bartending, just for
Mhm.
VIPs, $150,000, and that doesn't cover the cost of the tenting and all of that. But it should definitely feel like you are in a different experience than, albeit I think I'm pretty proud of what we offer for the general admission. We really focus a lot on that, but we want the VIP folks that spend that money and make that investment to get things in there that you can't get out on the main lawn.
Yeah, and I'll say this. A couple of years ago, I was on the insider list, and I was waiting on my ability to buy a VIP ticket because I did the first year as just a standard full weekend ticket, and the second year I was like, let's see what the VIP is about, and it definitely was elevated. And then attending last year, being able to see the difference between VIP from one year to the next, it elevated another level. And it sounds like you're continuing to do those things, and you said exactly what I wrote down when you were talking about, you want everybody to be able to have a chance to feel like it. If everyone is a VIP, no one is. I actually word for word had that written down here, and it looks like folks are still feeling um, that that's the case, right? That
Right.
spending the money for the VIP is worth it. And anybody that I talk to that's planning to come to the event, I tell me, he's like, if you can budget for it, absolutely do this thing, because there's a number of benefits. One of them being the tinted heating and cooled space, right? Is it's September, and we've had really good weather the last 3 years for the event. Got a little bit rainy towards the end of the weekend last year, and the first year it rained a whole bunch before, and then it was okay. But then you had, I laughed a little bit earlier when you said we're not putting straw bales down for people to sit on. But the first year you were putting straw bales down because you had to make it a walkable surface, because there's like a
Yeah.
unrealistic, historic type flooding situation that occurred. But it is worth the money to have the added benefits, the cooled location, the food offerings that are in there, the bar that's in there, the cocktails. And this is a thing that I really have enjoyed over the last couple of years, seeing it develop. The first year we had all the pull tabs, and you get your drinks and cocktails and whatever. The addition of intentionality for cocktails, that was the thing that made the difference. For my wife, she's not a bourbon aficionado the way I am, but she absolutely will enjoy a drink. And luckily, she's far more artistic than I am, so I get to use her for good pictures and video, because she's good at things like that. But it adds another facet to, if I want to come to this, but I don't have a friend that wants to come with me, I can almost find somebody if they're willing to drink cocktails, right? And it also helps, after day two of drinking nothing but neat pours, sometimes you just want something that's a little bit different. Um, maybe you can talk a little bit about um, cocktails themselves, right? So you were
Mhm.
talking about, and maybe this is more of an idea than it is a conversation piece. You're talking about the competition between distilleries for their event space. Maybe next year there's a competition between the distilleries for the best cocktail of the event, right? Like, that's because there's some heavy hitters that happen in there.
Oh yeah. Well, and we've talked about that, and there used to be a cocktail competition in conjunction with the Bourbon Festival in the old version,
Mhm.
and whether it is on purpose or not, there's some of those things like the gala. Everybody always wants to know the bourbon prom, as they call it.
Mhm.
They ask, is that ever coming back? And I never say never, but those kind of things, the All Star Sampler, that was done because that was really the only way you could get samples and cocktails from the distilleries, and that was in a separate building, not even associated directly with the festival ground. So now that
Right.
we have the laws changed, why do that when you can just come to the festival?
Right.
I'm also very careful. That first year, we went until 10 o'clock at night. Beautiful venue, don't get me wrong, but
Yeah.
when you're doing that, you're keeping all of those people inside your venue, and you're not sharing them with the community. So the last 2 years, and again this year, we're closing at 6 o'clock.
Mhm.
People can go directly to dinner. They can go out and have fun on the town. They can go back to their hotel, Airbnb, shower up. And what we've been working towards is getting those distilleries to now take on the evening entertainment. So, the tours are booked right now. I almost guarantee you that weekend, every one of the major distilleries that are out there are already booked. But if they do an evening event from 7 to 10, it allows them additional time to get
Mhm.
eyes there on their product and on their venue, and they've all spent millions on upping their game with tasting rooms and some with restaurants. And so why not let them showcase their product and their venue. And we don't need to have that. I mean, we don't need to get all that money. It's like we want to turn people loose after they have our experience, breathe them all in, and then push them out in the community. And 15 years ago, I was in Denver over Labor Day weekend, and friends of mine from Milwaukee that I worked with on festivals ran an event that I believe is still going. It's basically Taste of Colorado, but it's like Celebration of Plain and Mountain or something. It's a really long name, but all Labor Day weekend, they would have their main stage with pretty good bands and have everything going, and then they'd shut it down, and you'd see people breathe out into the surrounding community, and then a couple hours later they'd start it all up again and people would come back. But it's breathing them in and out so they actually get more of an experience. Bardstown is an amazing little town, but people wouldn't know it if all they're doing is going from the hotel to the festival back to the hotel. So now we see that we're sharing it. The retailers are staying open later, they're seeing a bump. And certainly the restaurants, bars, and the distilleries themselves who are doing these evening experiences are seeing that. So plus it's also a liability issue for us. If we have people there for 6 hours, now very few people come in at noon and drink until, that's why the shopping and the food trucks and the lounge areas are important, because if you're just going from one distillery to the next without any kind of a break in between, it could get ugly. But by getting them out at 6 o'clock, people can take a breather and go get refreshed, right, and go out and enjoy, have their own experience at night, and then be rested up and come back to see us the next day, hopefully.
Yeah, I was going to say that the first year, whenever it ran until, after dark, which it was beautiful. After dark, it was absolutely beautiful. The hanging lights and all of that, it made for a really nice ambiance. But I don't know that there's many of us left of any significant age that are prepared for 3 days of that, right? Like you can hit the first day and you can go until dark, and then the next morning it's hard to get up, and you got to kind of, maybe you need the IV station, you need whatever it is. Let's talk about, I guess, maybe a little bit about transportation. In the past, I think there's been opportunities to go from the event to distilleries via bus or whatever. Is that still an opportunity, or is that something that the distilleries will have to manage?
Well, it's a combination of all the above. And so just to put it out there, Uber and Lyft, the corporate marketing folks I've been working with, to try to get them to provide the service in Bardstown. And so you need to be aware that it is a small town, and despite their best efforts to get drivers, they have not been very successful. So that's one thing that people should be prepared for, is that you're not just going to be able to walk out the front gate and have your Uber and Lyft app open and get a car in 5 minutes. So that's probably the most important part. But there are local transportation offerings that we're actually working with them during the year to create some routes. So one route that would go to like the hotel area to the festival in a triangle, and then have one that goes out to the like Lux Row and Heaven Hill and Bardstown Bourbon Company and Willett, and kind of make that round. So I mean, those things will be coming together. There is a taxi service, and I will tell you, because of the challenge getting hotel rooms in Bardstown proper, we've partnered with a number of downtown Louisville hotel properties. So Hotel Distill, Omni, the Marriott, some of the really nice names. And we also realize that if you're coming in, the Bardstown offerings of hotels just may not be what you are looking for. So you can stay in a really nice downtown Louisville hotel, go out and enjoy Whiskey Row, the Urban Bourbon Trail, and all the distilleries that are there, Angel's Envy, Rabbit Hole, Michter's. I mean, they're all right there. And a lot of our Bardstown distilleries are opening tasting rooms downtown there. So you've got Evan Williams, you've got Bardstown Bourbon Company, Buzzard's Roost, they're all coming online with their own tasting rooms. But we have a shuttle service that runs from the hotels in downtown Louisville to the front gate of the festival and back numerous times of the day. So we're really encouraging people to take advantage of that if you can. So 6:30, I think, at night, the last bus runs from the festival up to the hotels, and there'll be 2 or 3 stops in downtown. It's not going to stop at every hotel, but at least get you in front of one hotel that's a block away from someone. So we're working with Derby City Gaming. They opened a new venue downtown, so we're looking at trying to do some things. So there's some, I guess, natural evening entertainment that it doesn't just go away if you leave the Bourbon Festival. There's things in Louisville waiting for you as well, and so we're pretty excited about that. And I'm excited to see that growth. Right? I mean, if you got to the point where you've got to be on a bus for a half hour, 40 minutes to enjoy the festival. It's kind of like Kentucky Derby. You can't
Yeah.
get a room in Louisville on Kentucky Derby. You're an hour outside of
Mhm.
Louisville and you're coming in. We're a small version of that. So now we're pushing people out maybe half an hour to get their
Right.
rooms and everything. But that's an indicator of that we're doing something right, that we've got people that are coming in and overflowing into the neighboring communities. So the whole region actually feels an uptick when it comes to positive economic impact.
Yeah, and I guess we're pushing close up on time, so I've got one last question for you, and then I'll let you get back to the things that actually make you money and make the event go. I get the opportunity, through this podcast, the opportunity to talk to a number of craft distilleries, and you said earlier you're already sitting on a wait list of distilleries that might want to participate in the event. If I'm a distillery, I'm a craft distiller, or whatever. And I'm like, hey, I really want to be a part of the Kentucky Bourbon Festival in 2025. How does that happen? Like, do you guys have a committee that meets and decides that, or is it solicit? Like, how do you get people on the list?
On the committee.
You're
No.
the committee.
Yeah, well, and Stacy, I mentioned Stacy Pritchard earlier. She's our vice president of distillery relations. She's really the eyes and ears now.
Mhm.
It's taken a tremendous weight off my shoulders, because up until a year and a half ago, it was all me. I did the sponsorships, I did the distillery stuff, I did the media things. So, but no, if you have interest in participating, the main thing that you have to check the box on before we can have any conversation is, do you have a Kentucky distiller's license, either
Mhm.
Class A or Class B? And do you have your sampling license? And the sampling license is $110 a year and maybe an hour online course to get that. But you have to have that Class A or Class B Kentucky distiller's license first.
Mhm.
That is the decision making point. Um, and I'm very humbled. We get calls and emails from distilleries in Texas, in Colorado, in Illinois, New York, Wisconsin. Funny story. One of my board members is the daughter of Lisa Wicker, and
Yeah.
she was with Widow Jane at the time in New York, and they wanted to be
Mhm.
here, and we had to tell them no, because they didn't have that Kentucky nexus
Right.
that they needed. So that's really the thing. I don't know of any distillery that we've ever said no to either being here if space allowed, or immediately putting them on the waiting list. One of the reasons why we're moving all of the bourbon marketplace to a different location was to expand that craft area.
Mhm.
So now we shouldn't have to have a waiting list. We should have ample space for the foreseeable future. If you've got an interest in being in this festival and you legally can check the boxes with the permits and everything, we're going to do everything we can to accommodate you. And the cool thing is we see distilleries that were the smaller, and we use craft and small batch and single barrels to kind of separate the levels. It has
Mhm.
nothing to do with their actual production, the volume. Like the Kentucky Distillers Association goes on your volume of
Right.
production. That's not us. I didn't want to be blue ribbon, red ribbon, or white ribbon, gold, silver, platinum, whatever, bronze. So
Yeah.
we came up with something. But so there are craft distillers that are down there that by no means are true the small craft. That's just the level that they thought that they could handle getting into this. So, but
Right.
we've got a few of those that are stepping up onto the bigger lawn and taking the bigger footprint. Chicken Cock is one that has been with us for a couple of years, and did the small spot, and now they feel like they're ready to go. Town Branch, Lexington Brewing, they're one of the unique ones that they also have a beer that they do. It's
Mhm.
bourbon, but they also have beer. So a lot of those guys are stepping up, getting bigger. We're seeing like Brown Forman now has had a Woodford Reserve and Old Forester under one tent. They're separating and having their own location for each brand. Lux Row is going to do something really cool. They're going to probably be the largest single tent out there on the lawn as far as the distilleries. So you're seeing this where they're getting it, and the
Yeah.
competition and the sales. I mean the fact that there are some of those distillers that were having well into the six figures on bottle sales just at the festival. And for the most part, it was product you couldn't just go to your local bottle shop and buy. So it's really important. And we tell the distilleries every chance we tell them, bring something that you can't get anywhere else. So
Mhm.
we've got, I think we're going to be over 30 of what we call the Distillers Row series, the single barrels that we
Mhm.
actually go out, 5 or 6 of us go out. And like yesterday, we did Pursuit Spirits. We did a pick for them. Tomorrow, we're going to Town Branch in Lexington and doing that. We'll have over 30 distillery partnerships that you can go in and buy those single barrels from the festival, and only from the festival. So
Mhm.
that's probably the biggest thing as far as what's in it for me. What's the value for that? Getting access and having
Right.
basically, I don't say it, but unlimited pours. You can come in and sample from these distilleries, but the fact that you can buy your bottles, we added lockers a couple years ago. So if you don't want to carry your booty around after you've done your treasure hunting, you can lock them up in a locker for the day and grab them, before you head back to your car, back to the
Mhm.
hotel. And so we're always trying to make sure that we've got that level of service. But that's the thing I'm most excited about really is seeing these distilleries that 4 years ago could maybe sample, but they couldn't sell.
Mhm.
So we had to partner with a bottle shop to do that, and then to see where they are now, where they get it. They know they've got skin in the game, and it's not just an expense; they're cash flowing. I want every one
Right.
of our distilleries to leave pay off their fees to be here and hopefully make a lot of money so they would never think of being anywhere else that weekend in September. And it is the bourbon capital of the world. So, we've got to make sure we're doing something you can't get anywhere else, not just for the guests, but also for our distilleries.
Without a doubt, and that's I think we can leave it there. I've got tons more questions, but not tons more time. I've said it every single time I've talked about it. There's nowhere else to have an opportunity to taste this many things and meet this many people that are passionate about the same thing that you are. If you happen to be a bourbon or whiskey aficionado, fan, whatever, the event is built in a way that while there may be 7,000 people there, it really never feels like 7,000 people. It can feel crowded, but not like, Disney crowded. And if you look at the different lands, anyways, you guys are doing a
That's important.
fantastic job.
And thanks for
It's
clarifying that. Yeah, that is important because I don't want people, the last thing I want to do as a festival goer is stand in line all day. And
yeah,
so, I mean, and that's including restrooms, that's including, refilling your water, that's including going to the food truck. There are a few, Heaven Hill and Beam, and a few that when they do limited releases, there's a line there. But people are standing there. They're choosing to stand in line to get
right.
that product. They're not having to stand in that line. So
That's
we
the
try
difference
to,
is they're choosing to stand in line because
that's
you
right.
can look around and this is usually how I plan mine is I'll look and see at the first part of the day it's easy to get into any tent, but as it goes it's like, okay, where's the line short, right? Because there's gonna be one line because the crowd ebbs and flows, and then all of a sudden everybody swarms the Penelope tent, but Peerless is wide open, right? And so you go over to Peerless, and all of a sudden Jim Beam is filled up, but Angel's Envy's not, right? So you can kind of find your way through the event, and it's not such a big location that you can't do all of those
Right.
things. But Randy, I know you've got other meetings to be at. Thank you so much for the time and the opportunity to
Thank
talk
you.
about this. It's something that I've been a huge fan of for a number of years. Um, time's something you can never get more of, so I want to be cognizant of that. Thanks for hopping on for the conversation.
Sure.
It's fantastic.
And thank you, John. And thanks for being with us and speaking to the changes that you've seen and experienced. And that's really important for us that we continue to do that. So thank you, and thank you for the time. And for listeners, viewers, thank you. If you haven't come, let's make this year that year that you come out and go to
Absolutely.
kybourbonfestival.com. April 16th is the insider sale, and then April 17th it goes onto the public. So
Thanks for tuning in for this episode of the Embellish Podcast. If you enjoyed this, please leave me a review on whatever platform that you're consuming this on. Leave a comment if possible. Hit me up on social media on TikTok or Instagram using EmbellishPod. Give me a follow so that way you can keep up with what's going on here. I can be found at www.embellishpod.com with all of my links, accounts, contact details, and more. Thanks for stopping by.